What is up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. This is the Matt Ramage Show, presented by Quick Trip. And we got Mr. Jacob Westendorf here today. But before we jump into him, want to give a shout out to Quick Trip. They are giving away chicken for life. So be sure to check out the chicken over at Quick Trip and use your Quick Rewards app, and you're automatically in the sweepstakes to win chicken for life. Win chicken till the day you die. You know what I mean? That'd be a fantastic thing. But what is up, Jacob? How you doing?
I'm telling you, after getting a chance to win chicken for life, that gives me a lot of motivation to want to live a hell of a lot longer. I know that.
Dude, I was saying this the other day, like it would be like the biggest flex. Like if you were single and you're just like, you know, like people are like talking up like what they got, but dude, I got chicken for life at Quick Trip. Anytime you could have chicken too.
Oh yeah, just come with me. You're with me,
yeah.
man. If you're with me, we're eating.
Yeah, we'd be at the bar, be like, dude, you want chicken? We can go get chicken right now, anytime.
The only problem I'd run into is I don't know if you're like me, but if it's free, it's for me. So like, that's the only thing I would eat.
Yeah, for real. Like I do. Yeah, if something's free, I'm getting after it. But how has your off season been?
It's a lot less busy, and also not a lot less busy, I guess, if that makes any sense. So trying to find that balance. There's less to do, but there's like more work to go into the things you are doing because, you know, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way as far as in-season content's easy because you're just talking about the game and like the next game and what this means and all that good stuff versus now it's like, man, it's the off season. I think they're going to be good next year, but like maybe not, but also who wants to talk about the maybe not part because the season finished on a low note because they lost a game they shouldn't have, but on a high note because they probably weren't supposed to be there anyways.
Yeah, and like you're spot on like with the content in the off season, especially for me because I'm not a draft guy. I don't know stuff. That's why I have people like you come on and tell us. But like I'm just not interested in college. So it just I don't know, it just never sparked my interest. As soon as like players are drafted, then I look into them or whatever. But I know some of the names because I watch some of the shows. But off season content is like you say in season, you can just do anything. The Packers win a game, I rant for a while, whatever. And off season you can't do that. But we're gonna get into this. I want to ask you about the additions that the Packers have made already, and then we'll talk about some draft stuff. But I want to give a shout out to Nicolay Law. All right, Nicolay Law, Russ Nicolay. I had him on my podcast. If you guys want to check that out, he's a good dude. Dude's got a Wisconsin tattoo on his arm. He's lawyering it up over there. He's got billboards all over Wisconsin. So if you need a lawyer, you get injured in a car accident, you got to handle that thing like that, then check out Nicolay Law. You know, you can go to nicolaylaw.com. And I want to give a quick shout out to this hoodie. Was sent to me by Cheese Life. All right, so I want to give them some props. Cheeselife.com. You can find them on social media, but they said, hey, I'll send you a hoodie. This is actually a sweet hoodie. I really like, especially like working at a cheese factory. I feel weird walking into a cheese factory wearing this. They're like, yeah, we get it. But
you're a company man, Matt.
Yeah, I just love. I don't. You put the word cheese on a hoodie, I'll wear it. You know what I mean? I don't know why.
It's Wisconsin, man. You're a Wisconsin guy through and through.
Yeah, for real. All right, so let's get into this. This off-season additions. They obviously everyone knows about the Aaron Jones situation. I think everyone has talked about it in every way that we can. But Josh Jacobs. As a replacement for Aaron Jones, because this is kind of what I've been arguing with people because like people on Facebook, they're saying like it's a downgrade. Like I don't think it is. Like even if you want to call it level or whatever, but like how do you see it? Like if it is, like no matter what it is, I think it's very, very close. And I love Aaron Jones. I was not happy about that decision, but like I feel like the Packers are in a really good spot.
Yeah, it was a shocker because I don't know if you listen to like all of Goody's pressers and all that stuff, but I do. And like just I do it as if I was there. That's kind of part of my quote unquote job, if you will. So when I listened to him after the season was over, that's always an interesting conversation because it gives you some insight into what they're thinking as far as the future goes. Like last year when Gutekunst talked, he had, they talked about Aaron Rodgers and they asked him if he wanted him back. And he was kind of like, I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying, well, if he wants to be back, we'll have him back versus previous years where it was, no, we're going to do everything we can to get him back. So you kind of got the answers to what they were thinking for the quarterback situation. Well, with Jones, he said that he was the heartbeat of their football team. And the conversation I had several times with a bunch of people was he's not going to say that and then cut him. You know, you don't take the heartbeat of the football team and cut him. Well, then they signed Josh Jacobs, and everybody's kind of like, whoa, like what's this supposed to mean? Ian Rappaport says the plan is to have both guys in the fold, and then within a couple hours, he was gone. And with Jacobs, here's the thing. In 2022, Josh Jacobs was the best running back in football. This is not a slight to Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones has never been the best running back in football. Whether it's because they don't use him enough or whether that's by design, he is smaller, he is slower, and I didn't realize he got hurt at the end of the 49ers game, but that means he had 3 lower body injuries to end last season. The NFL is a business. Brian Gutekunst is making a bet on someone 4 years younger, and it's essentially, I'm sure you've read the Andrew Brandts and the people that break down contracts much better than I can. It's a 1-year deal. So it's 1 year, and we'll see from there. Like if they want to pick him up next year or keep him for next year, they can, but maybe they don't. I think that if they get the 2022 version of Josh Jacobs, and I do have some concerns about that due to some of the workload that he's had, and I'm not as confident in this offensive line as presently constructed right now as maybe some others are. And that being said, it is a much better group than some of the trash that he was running behind in Las Vegas last year. So it's probably about a net neutral. You know, they still need to add a guy in the draft and maybe 2 and kind of run from there. But he's it's not this big, massive shift that you might think. And from a leadership standpoint, which was a big thing in Jones's corner, you know, Josh Jacobs is a 2-time captain in Las Vegas. And he recently did, not Jacobs, but there was a conversation had between Peter Bukowski and somebody that covers the Raiders that basically said Josh Jacobs held that Raiders team together. I think that's a big deal too. So that's going to be a tough spot for him. I kind of feel bad for him because he's the guy who replaced Aaron Jones, who was, if you ask 100 Packer fans who their favorite player is, you know, now that Rodgers was gone, I'd bet a decent percentage of that say Aaron Jones. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is for sure. Yeah. It was, I've talked about to death on this stuff, but it was super surprising. But I compare it like to me, like playing Madden. Like I'll keep guys like on my team just because I like them in real life, and then it's just not good GMing. So it's got to be cutthroat. Like they're not talking about what he did for us because Aaron Jones did a lot. They're thinking what next season, what's the best situation for them, and obviously they made that decision. I feel like something happened behind closed doors. Like maybe it was going to happen, and then it just stopped. So then it was just Josh Jacobs. But we are where we are.
Yeah, it's tough to ask a player to take a pay cut 2 years in a row, which is what they did this year. And this year, the pay cut they were asking him for was significant. I mean, Matt Schneidman reported a $4 million base salary. His base salary coming into next year was going to be $12 million. I mean, that's a significant pay cut.
Yeah.
So if you ask somebody to do that 2 years in a row, the other thing is you got to say, you know, you got to be prepared to cut those guys if they're going to tell you they don't want their pay cut, because then it's just like, well, why would they? You know, why would anybody ever take a pay cut if you're just like, oh, never mind, just kidding.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. Yeah, and I get that because like if everyone's saying like you're the heartbeat of this team, you're, you know, and obviously he's a huge leader, everyone loves him, and then he's like, then why am I taking a pay cut? You know what I mean? Like the best worker at your job, and they're like, hey, you should take a pay cut.
Right.
And I'm not taking no pay cut. They asked me to give back a nickel. I'm like, nope, I ain't doing it. So one guy that we got ourselves a new safety, McKinney. I don't know a ton about him. I was actually reading. I don't read a lot of articles, but I actually started reading a little bit because I couldn't find no videos. But what are your thoughts on him, and how great you think he can be in this defense?
Yeah, have you made a list of like guys as far as top free agents available, which a bunch of places did? You know, The Athletic, Matt Schneidman, he was number 1. Bill Huber, Packer Central, he was number 1. Ross Uglum, Packer Report, had McKinney number 1, just as far as targets. That was probably Green Bay's biggest need because there was nobody there. And, you know, the other reality is the guys that were playing there last year, no disrespect to Jonathan Owens, no disrespect to Rudy Ford and Darnell Savage and all this, but none of them were very good, you know, and McKinney is a guy who's an ascending player. He's 24 years old, plays he can play any position, I think, on that back end, whether that's nickel corner, the post safety, which is like the new buzzword this offseason, or that safety in the box. It costs a lot of money, but that is the way that, free agents work. The one thing that is, commonly said is if you are measured and smart and controlled when chasing free agents, then you're going to finish third for every single free agent that you chase after. Sometimes you got to quote unquote overpay a little. But I personally think talking about overpaid, underpaid, good value, all that stuff, it's just fan copium most of the time because we're going to find a way to justify our favorite team signing a player, right? That's just kind of how it works as a fan. So when somebody's like, oh, we didn't get player X that we wanted, it's like, oh, well, they overpaid for him. It's like, well, maybe, but nobody's really thinking about how much money that player's making when he's making plays for your team.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to do well. Listening to him talk and say that he came to Green Bay because he wanted to play with Jordan Love was pretty cool especially after somebody that used to play here kind of saying the only reason people came to Green Bay was to play with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought that was kind of nice. We all remember, but I think McKinney's going to be one of those dudes that I will not be surprised if he's a captain for this team as soon as, 2024, this upcoming season. I think he's going to be the perfect addition to this defense. It's just a matter of kind of filling in the rest of the holes around the group here. Cause there's, for as much as we talk about, oh, they've spent $1 million first-round picks on defense, there's still, some open spots here that got to be covered up.
Yeah, I think it's huge having like a big time safety. And like you said about signing free agents, how many times have the Packers, they're in the mix all the time. And they always say that, well, we're always looking into it. You know what I mean? And then, but like fans are always mad. Like we didn't get our guy. Like, oh, the Packers put an offer, but it was obviously low. So like when you want that dude, when like that's our guy, then you have to, overpay just slightly. But I think a lot of teams are, and I would assume that a lot of teams are kind of in the same spot. But then the player just picks what team do I want to play with. Especially big time players, not every player. But it's cool that people are choosing to play in Green Bay.
Yeah, it is, and that's something that I think that's the way that it works. That's the fun part is to see. It doesn't happen in the other sports, right? Like nobody, whatever the equivalent to Green Bay is in baseball, basketball, except those guys are not free agents, big stars are not choosing to go play in those sports. And that's why the NFL is one of the many reasons the NFL is the king. Yeah.
I mean, like players can become fan favorites and get like some endorsement deals, but I doubt they're the same endorsement type deals that they're getting. Some players are getting in like, the big cities, Dallas and all those places. But I want to talk about some draft, but like explain to everyone like what you do. You have a draft guide coming out here, and so talk about that.
Yeah, so this is our third year of the Green Bay Draft Guide. It's powered by Packer Report with Ross Uglum and Jacob Morley. We've done that together now. This is the second year with all three of us. The first year it was just Morley and myself, and then we added Ross to the mix. But it's 225 profiles and fit to how you guys have probably read people say like, oh, the Packers probably won't be in the mix for this guy, or like this guy doesn't fit as well as maybe someone else. It's catered to your team instead of a general draft guide, which I mean, those things certainly have value as well, but it is catered to the Packers. How do they fit with the Packers and what they've typically preferred? And we have, each of us will write a feature article, and in addition to those profiles, kind of go through all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. Like you said, it's less stuff, if you will, but it's more thought and effort put into those things as far as volume goes. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. If you pre-order now, which the link is in the bio here, I think is what you had said, Matt.
Yeah, so, I have the link on the YouTube bio, the description.
So if you guys click on that link, you could pre-order it today for $8.99. It goes up by $1 after a certain point too, and it drops on April 8th, I think, is the official drop date. But anybody, I mean, if you want to ask around, there are people who have bought it and they said they haven't been disappointed. So I'd like to think that's the case. So if you want, go find at Jacob Morley. You can currently read the write-up that Kent Swanson did on Jordan Love, and that's kind of a cool thing to look back on, especially now as Love has kind of arrived.
Yeah, and I'll definitely be getting that draft guide so that I can talk and people like, I'll know some names. I'll sound like I'm smart a little bit. But going into this draft, what do you think the Packers' main objective should be? Like, what positions are going after? What are you thinking?
Yeah, offensive line is definitely one. I think that I am not somebody that is necessarily high on the work that Sean Ryan did to finish the season. I think it was fine, but there were certainly some bad moments as well. And, the other thing about Sean Ryan, he's never started or finished, a full game. So the idea that we're talking about him like it can just happen and everything will be fine and dandy, I just don't know about that. And his top backup currently is Royce Newman, who name search Royce Newman. Just do that on the internet. People are not thrilled with the work of Royce Newman. Josh Myers is playing on an expiring contract. Rasheed Walker played better down the stretch last year. Brian Gutekunst gave him an endorsement, which helps. But, if he regresses at all, the Packers are now looking at, left tackle, center, and right guard as positions that need to be potentially upgraded. And then, even if you just assume those five are good, the depth on the offensive line has taken a hit this offseason. Yosh Nijman signed in Carolina. John Runyon signed with the Giants. Like, they've lost some guys on the back part of that room as well. So I imagine they will be adding a couple guys as soon as pick number 25. And I would not be surprised at all if they added a couple guys later in the draft as well. So I think that's, one of your top priorities. The secondary, the linebackers, the kind of the back seven of the defense, if you will. Linebacker room is perilously thin. Devondre Campbell, obviously in the news recently, just got cut. And then the only linebackers they have right now are Quay Walker, who's a question mark, and Isaiah McDuffie, who has never really played extended snaps. And whenever he has, he's gotten hurt. So their third starter right now in their base defense is Christian Welch, who is a special teams player. Cool story, having trick-or-treated in Green Bay and all that stuff. That's pretty cool, but he's a special teams player. So between that, the other safety spot still doesn't have another starter in it. And the cornerback room, I'm not sure how I feel about running it back essentially with last year's group, plus hopefully more of Eric Stokes.
All right, so I'm gonna get to the super chat. Appreciate the super chat. He said Cooper, DeJean, and McKinney would be awesome duo. That's a name that I see a lot. I'm clueless with college, so
right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, shout out to my guy, Iowa Joe, the Iowa Hawkeye fan that is most prevalent on the internet that I'm aware of, at least. But Cooper DeJean, Iowa, slot corner, outside corner, safety type player. He can kind of do all three of those things. He probably fits best as a safety. A scout talked to Bill Huber before free agency started, and Bill asked essentially, what is the best potential duo between free agents and a draft pick that the Packers could take at safety? He said DeJean and Xavier McKinney. So that would be fun. DeJean has some value as a returner as well. One of the best plays of last college football season was one that didn't even count. Ball bounced and DeJean returned it for a touchdown, but the officials ruled that he signaled for a fair catch, and it was absurd. It's one of the worst calls I've ever seen, but that is the way that worked. But DeJean could kind of do a little bit of everything for the Packers, and I think that's something that could be scary, because we've said that about players before. Demarius Randall is one who people have talked about as he could have played safety, he could have played nickel, could play outside, and he was not good at any of those things in Green Bay, save for that one season. So Cooper DeJean is definitely the guy, if you will, that seems like the draft crush, the consensus amongst the Packer fan base for the first round. Matt, I'm sure you've noticed this too. Every year we get the internet decides who the only pick is for that position.
Yeah.
Last year, it was the receiver from Ohio State, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And it was if they don't pick him, the first round's a failure, essentially. And it's well, no, there's other good players. The Packers can take, there's other corners, there's other safeties, there's some good players in some other spots. It's just kind of a matter of how Brian, and the other thing is how Brian Gutekunst views his roster is not necessarily the way we do. I remember
exactly.
the year they drafted Jordan Love, everyone was oh, they got to get another pass catcher. They got to get another receiver. And Gutekunst never drafted one, and basically said after a certain point, we didn't even feel like these guys were going to make the team. And the Packers, again, Gutekunst's not perfect. The Packers, not perfect. More often than not, though, when they come to evaluating who's on their roster versus who's not, they usually end up right.
Yeah, I think they do. But big shout out to Mike. I appreciate that. But yeah, talking about Gutekunst and how like I think he's like the most confident person in the world. Like with the moves he makes, he's just like, this is what I think, that this is what I'm doing. Like with the Jordan Love pick. I had no idea who Jordan Love was before they drafted him. Like I heard his name because like you hear a lot of names. Like it seems like it, as closer as a draft gets, you start hearing all these names. Even like in like previous years, it seems like just talk gets guys moving up the board. Like they're like, we're talking about this quarterback, and now he's like, oh, this is the next Joe Montana, or this is the next whatever. I think people get excited about it, but yeah, GMs definitely, I think, view, because it's not just the quality of player, what he did. It's about your team, what he's going to be around or whatever. There's a lot that goes into it, and that's why I think that sometimes they do stuff and everyone's just like, what was that? But like, yeah, they obviously are in a different world than us.
Well, and they look 2-3 years down the road, right? So
yeah,
they picked Jordan Love with the future in mind, saying the draft is a long-term process. Could they pick a position like that, a defensive tackle, just to throw something out there? And I don't necessarily think this is going to happen, but Kenny Clark's on an expiring contract. Do they draft his replacement? Maybe. It's certainly possible. I don't think that's going to be the route that they go, but I mean, the Packers don't give out a ton of third contracts to players. Aaron Rodgers got one. They didn't give one to Devontae. They gave one to David Bakhtiari, which unfortunately didn't work because he got injured. But like, that's possible that the Packers are saying like, hey, this is Clark's last year, instead of giving him another market-setting deal as he's beginning to age, as weird as it sounds, because he's only like 27 years old or something like that.
Yeah, he's 26, I think.
Yeah, so he's a younger guy, and I know that that's kind of a popular move in terms of signing him to save more cap space and all that good stuff. But that's the other thing, is looking at needs for the future. What do they have? Not necessarily just to help the team in 2024, but beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. With Kenny Clark, that's why I can never be a GM. Because like I like him, and that's exactly what Gutekunst can't do. He's like, oh, that guy's nice. They're all nice. You know what I mean? But that's what kind of how fans fall in love with these players. But so how do you see, like, obviously there's a lot of ways that this draft could go, but how do you see them like starting off, like the first 2 or 3 picks? What do you think? Not that but like if you were going to what would you do?
Yeah, so looking at so they have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, which is awesome. Something that makes this job so much easier is the way Gutekunst has stockpiled draft capital in recent. Now, granted, unfortunately, it was 1 year because they traded Devontae Adams, which sucked for very many obvious reasons, I think. But
yeah,
when you got those 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, I think that you want to come away with that. You could use one as a luxury pick if you wanted to, which means maybe you use it to trade up and grab a guy that you really like. Maybe you use that to draft a position that you don't necessarily need, or maybe doesn't have as much quote unquote value. Like an example I could give, say the 25th pick, you grab an offensive lineman, and at 41, you're sitting there, and the guy that you think is the best running back in this draft class and the potential replacement down the road for Jacob/AJ Dillon, and you grab him at 41. That's something that you could, whether that's Jonathan Brooks from Texas, Jalen Wright from Tennessee. Those are some names that are pretty popular in that ish range. And then I think a linebacker is something that's going to get pushed up the board too, because the linebacker class isn't very good for this year. I don't know who that. Edgerrin Cooper is a guy they had in on a top 30 visit, which I'll be tracking all of those over at Packer Central. So if you guys want to learn about those guys that are coming in, they've had 2 so far that have been reported. So Cooper's one, Zach Zinter, the guard from Michigan, is the other one. But that's kind of where I would start. I think this draft is going to be quote unquote boring outside of the running back position, meaning, and when I say boring, I just mean I don't think they're going to add players that are fantasy football players. Maybe I could see them grabbing a receiver if they really, really liked one in one of those first 3 picks, but I don't know if that'll happen. But I think that realistically, it's going to be defensive linemen, offensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. So the picks with the most sex appeal, if you will, are guys like, those DBs that get interceptions and stuff like that. Mike, I see your super chat. So if you want to pull that up there, Matt. Edgerrin Cooper, that's a guy we just talked about a little bit, and you'll never hear me say a bad word about Blake Corum ever. So you want to talk about why I can't be a GM? This is a guy I've watched play for the last 4 years, and he had one of the best runs I've ever seen to win the Rose Bowl against Alabama and got the clinching touchdown in Michigan's national championship game. So Blake Corum's good. And I will say this about Blake Corum, throwing the Michigan bias aside. The idea that he is not explosive anymore, I could not disagree with you more. Is he going to hit the 80-yard run and run away from you the way that maybe Jalen Wright will? No. But like his touchdown run against Ohio State after Zach Sinter gets hurt, like jump cut in the hole, moves like 3 yards side to side in a blink. Like that's explosive. It just looks different than kind of what I'm talking about that way too. So I do think he's a good player. I think you have to be smart about the way you're going to use him. How much capital is that guy worth? I don't know, but he's one of the best running backs in this class. I don't ascribe to the theory of like he's just a college back.
And I appreciate that super chat, Mike. Yeah, like I have no idea what you're talking about. That's what's funny about talking about the draft with someone is like I don't know everything, but I could just nod and pretend I do, but I like to be honest with my people. But I want to get to this next.
I think that's the best way to go about it, though. Something that it's a personal peeve of mine is like it's okay to just say I don't know or I haven't watched this person play yet or something like that because I mean it's hard. Some people if this isn't what you like to do, then it's hard to have a strong opinion on a bunch of guys. Like, I mean, there are guys that have watched more guys than me. Ross Uglam's got a big board of like 300 people. And like, I don't have the capacity to do that. So I think it's okay. I don't know.
On Twitter, it's crazy. Yeah. But I want to bring someone on here because I know my audience, they always ask me questions. I don't BS people. I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I'll Google it and I'll find something. I'm like, hey, read this article. That's what I found.
Good way to do it.
But Iowa Joe, he said, I think this is honestly a year they trade down, accumulate more picks, and could even send some out for some veteran types. I could definitely see them doing some trades just because, like, I feel like that's kind of like Gutekunst, he likes to get more picks. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, Goody talked about trading picks he's mentioned trading picks for veterans twice. Now, I don't know what that means. They haven't done that yet, obviously. Maybe that's something they do during the draft or as we get closer to the draft. I don't know. As far as moving down, I could see them. This is kind of a cop-out answer, but I could see them doing either one. Because Gutekunst has moved up in the first round. There was a point where he did it like every year when he was the general manager. So Alexander, Savage, Love. The first time he didn't was when he picked Eric Stokes. So I think that this could be a year where he does something like that if the board falls a certain way. I also think like there was the 33rd team did a mock draft today where Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State, was falling down, and he was 17 was where Gutekunst would have had to get to put him in front of Cincinnati to take him. Like that's a spot where I think it's possible the Packers would, move up and grab, because Fashanu for the longest time it was him or Notre Dame's Joe Alt as far as who are the best tackles in this class. And it feels like as we've gotten further removed from the season that it's kind of Alt with a bullet at number one. And then Fashanu is kind of being pushed down, which is probably where the NFL has had him the entire time. But if that's the case, I think Green Bay is in a position where, moving up to grab one of those star tackles and hoping he's your star left tackle of the future, and then Rasheed Walker becomes your swing tackle. The Packers clearly value that position. They just paid $4.5 million last year to Yosh Nijman to be their swing tackle. Like their hope was that he never started for them when they made that deal. And he didn't for different reasons. But I think that's a position that most teams in the NFL don't have two starting tackles. The Packers have typically valued having three guys they feel good about being able to put in those spots.
Yeah, we got ourselves another super chat here from Mike. What is up? He said, one more. What are your thoughts on Braylon Allen?
Well, he plays for Wisconsin. So no, I'm just kidding. I just talked to Owen Reese about him, and they're like, he is what people think Derrick Henry is, which is to say, like, he is going to run through your face. And Derrick Henry doesn't really do that. Like Derrick Henry's a wide zone, one cut and go kind of back, which kind of is why he fits pretty well in Matt LaFleur's scheme system, and did so well with Arthur Smith when he was an MVP candidate. But Braylon Allen, I mean, if he can figure out how to hold on to the football, fumbles were a big concern when he was in college. The injury concerns, I know he's been injured at least each of the last 2 years, but that's going to be the case for most backs. I don't mind him as a prospect. I think if you can get him in the 3rd or 4th round, that's a good spot. If you're telling me that you got to pick him in the 2nd round, I'm probably not too wild about that. I'm curious. I don't know, but I'm curious about his ability in the passing game. If it happens, just because Wisconsin didn't use him a whole lot in that way. And the Packers, I do think, are placing a premium on players that can catch the ball out of the backfield. That's partially why, part of what I think attracted them to Josh Jacobs as a running back. But I do like him. I think he's a good player. And, the case with a lot of these guys is just where do they end up for that kind of thing. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up and how everything shakes out for him. But he's a good player. I think he'd be a good fit for what Green Bay has and what they're trying to do.
I appreciate that super chat, Mike. So let me ask you this, because this is a question I get asked about every single day on Facebook. What are the Packers? Oh, this is a good one. I had to cough. But what are the Packers' plans for kicker? Like, I assume they're going to have some guys come in. They're going to compete in training camp or whatever. But is that what you're thinking?
So they signed a guy like 3 days after the season ended, to which I said I don't know where and I know, Matt, you are as rose-colored glasses as anyone I have ever met. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment. The line I wrote after the game was over against the 49ers when talking about the missed kick was it would have been forgivable if it wasn't so predictable. And the point I was making was Carlson missed a kick in every game, I think, except for one from the bye week on. That includes the playoff game against Dallas, where he missed a PAT the week prior. And I said it when he missed the PAT against Dallas. I'm like, probably not today, because that was a kick to make it 21-0, but that is going to cost you at some point. Yeah. And unfortunately, predictably, it did. That is not the only reason the Packers lost to the 49ers. However, when you are a younger team, and this is no disrespect to Jordan Love when I say this, but when you don't have Aaron Rodgers in his prime as far as a MVP level quarterback right freaking now, your margin for error is smaller. Missing that kick, and when you're the lesser team on the road, which the Packers are a lesser team than the 49ers right now, and they were in San Francisco, that's harder to do. Yeah. I think that they should have changed kickers in season, and that didn't mean you had to give up on Anders Carlson. And for everybody that points out to me is like, well, Mason Crosby had a couple bad years and he did this. Mason Crosby was good. Mason Crosby is not the gold standard for kickers in the NFL. And Mason Crosby was not Justin Tucker or the kid from Dallas who never missed a kick this year until he did, which was kind of funny against us. But I mean, I feel like there should have been some competition brought in during the season. They have some there now. I'm just curious if it's a real competition or if it's like the one where the Packers brought in Giorgio Tavecchio to quote-unquote challenge Mason Crosby, and Mike McCarthy never even bothered to learn Tavecchio's real name. It was kind of a running joke that he always called him Sergio. If the coach doesn't learn your name, you're not making the team.
No, you're not. That's not good. All right, we have another super chat here. What's up, Chad? He said, do you see trading a wide receiver to address other needs? Linebacker, offensive line?
No, I don't. That's pretty rare. What was it just happened recently? Rondale Moore got traded for Desmond Ridder, and then like people were trying to find the last player for player trade like that. It just doesn't happen very often. Plus, at the Packers receiver room, I'm actually doing this as a story right now in terms of like building the roster as part of my series that I'm kind of going through. But Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks, Jaden Reed, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, and then like I've got Toure and those guys towards the back end of that roster. But that's 6 guys that you feel pretty good about. What those 6 guys need to do is figure out like where do they rank in terms of a hierarchy. But you don't really know how good any of them are because none of them have put together back-to-back really good seasons. Like the one who's closest to have done that is Dobbs. And I don't think Dobbs had a really good season last year. He was fine as a rookie, but he was fine as a second-year player this year. Watson struggled with the injuries. Reed and Wicks were awesome, but, Gutekunst talked about it at the end of the season. They got to do it again. Bo Melton, is he a flash in the pan? Does he have more to his game than that? We'll see. Malik Heath, is he just a goon? Matt LaFleur's wording, not mine. Or, is there a little more to him as well? I'd like to see how that goes, but I don't think the Packers aren't in a position where it's like, we're good here. So let's move off these guys and see if we can find some stuff. Unless there's something that you just can't refuse. Like if somebody says, hey, San Francisco calls and says, we'll trade you Trent Williams for Malik Heath, and you say yes before they change their mind kind of thing. That's obviously not going to happen. But, if you get something you absolutely can't refuse, sure. But I don't think they'll do that.
Yeah, I absolutely love the wide receiver room. If these guys can all because a lot of them showed like that they got something. If they all turn out to be like what my biased self thinks they can be, this offense will be stupid. Plus with the tight ends, we're good at running back. Like I feel like this offense can be absolutely special. But I don't want to keep it too much of your time. But I want to talk about the defense. We got the new defensive quarter, and shout out to Chad. I appreciate that super chat. This defense, we're switching, obviously, 4-3. What do you think this defense looks like? Do you think that, because I've been yelling, whenever they switch defense coordinator, I always feel like that first year, doesn't matter what's going to happen down the road. That first year, there's a spike. Everyone's sold in. Everyone's trying. They got the players. But how good do you think that this defense can be?
Something I'm excited about, and it sounds simple, but it doesn't happen often. And what I mean is I'm saying that the reporting is that Jeff Hafley is going to build and these are his words too, that he's going to build the defense around the player skills that he has. Instead of saying, this is my system, this is what we have to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. That usually doesn't work. And what I mean by that is that's when you start fitting square pegs into round holes, and you start seeing guys that don't fit in this scheme, or whatever it is, it ends up that. So I'd like to think that he circles, what I did, and my coaching experience is at a much, 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 much smaller level than the National Football League. But when I was coaching baseball, what I did was I said, here are my best players. I am going to build my team around these 3 or 4 guys. I would like to think that when Jeff Hafley sits in a room, maybe not his best players, because one of the guys I'm going to mention is not one of their best players, but I think he circles Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander and now Xavier McKinney and Quay Walker. That's the one who I think that you have to figure out what is the best use for him? How do you make him a consistent playmaker in the middle of the defense? But it's figuring out how to best use those guys and what puts those players in the best positions to succeed, to wreck the game. That's something that the 49ers have done a good job over the years with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and some of those guys are scheme transcendent. They can do it with whatever they want anyways. The Eagles did it really well a few years ago with Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. I'm trying to think of some other teams with good defenses, like the Jets with Sauce Gardner, or once upon a time with Darrelle Revis. When you have trump cards like that, I think you have to figure out the best ways to use them. And the Packers, by extension, those players, they got to kind of play up to the billing of their names. I love Rashawn Gary. That's my guy. And I know sacking the quarterback isn't everything, but you got to have more than a half sack in the last 6-7 games of the season, man. That's what the elite pass rushers do. The pressure numbers matter, certainly, but you have to get the quarterback on the ground as well. That's the other part of it is, the best players have to make those plays. Kansas City, for example, one of their best players is L'Jarius Sneed. And the AFC Championship game, Zay Flowers is reaching for the goal line, and Sneed knocks the ball out of his hands, and it becomes a touchback. That's a huge momentum-swinging, game-changing play. And when is the last time, Matt, that the Packers had a guy make a play? I guess the answer is really Darnell Savage against the Cowboys, the pick 6. But against San Francisco, they had chances to make those plays. Savage drops a pick. The pick goes right through Keyshawn Nixon's hands. Jordan Love makes a couple bad decisions that turn into interceptions instead of hitting guys that were available, open. Those guys got to make plays too. And that's the biggest thing, where one of my old football coaches used to always say, you could scheme it to death, but players make plays. Every single play ever, even Joe Barry's, work on the whiteboard. Got to make plays on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially in those big time games. That's when you need your big time players to make.
Think about it. Super Bowl 45, right? Nick Collins, pick 6. Tramon Williams, pass breakup to end the game. Clay Matthews, forced fumble. Those are just guys on defense. Those were their best players. Charles Woodson unfortunately got hurt, so he didn't have a chance to make a big play. But I bet you if he finished the game, he would have.
Guarantee would have. I like this question right here though. Let's see if I can find it from Brandon. Said, where do you rank Goody as a GM throughout the entire NFL?
To quote Jim Harbaugh, I don't have a list in front of me. But what I will say about Gutekunst is he has been acquitted very well with this turnaround from Jordan Love. And what I mean by that is when the Packers were 3-6 and the offense was not playing well, I mean, if that season is an absolute disaster and they finish 3-14, 4-13, I promise you the discussion that we'd be having, and it would be warranted, is whether or not those guys had gotten fired. And they didn't. And that's due to, Gutekunst's foresight, his ability to move up and select quarterback. And some of that is the luxury he's afforded that I don't think Packer fans appreciate enough. And that is the fact that there is no owner of the Green Bay Packers. There is no impatient owner saying, nope, you are not drafting Jordan Love, trade your future picks and go up and get this final piece to get us into the Super Bowl. And now you have the team kind of toiling in no man's land. Gutekunst's ability to do that and the conviction to do it, that kind of helps. His willingness to admit mistakes when they happen. I think that's something that he has done very well with. Jimmy Graham was a mistake, for example. The Aaron Rodgers contract, he kind of didn't really have a choice, but was able to move out of that after a year. And kind of the management of a whole as the Jordan Love selection, Aaron Rodgers going into a tirade. And it's been – Matt Schneidman had a really good article in The Athletic for Rodgers after he got traded. And, some of the stuff that was in the news about them singing kind of Kumbaya and everybody being happy and forgiven and moved on, I don't think that ever actually happened. So Gutekunst's ability to kind of work through that, by extension, Matt LaFleur as well. There are probably other people in the NFL that I would rather have than Gutekunst as a general manager, but there aren't very many is what I'll say on that. He's done a very good job of building the team. I think he's built 2 championship rosters already with 2020 and 2021. They just didn't win a championship on the field. And I think they're well on their way to building another one. These last 2 or 3 draft classes look like absolute home run swings. He's been true to his philosophy, the way his predecessor Ted Thompson was, but with a little bit more spice, adding guys like Xavier McKinney and Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. Shout out. That's your guy. I know that's your guy. That's my guy. No. I don't know him like you do. I'm not best friends with him like you are, but Preston is.
Well, I'm not best friends.
But Preston's the man. So
he blocked my number. No, but I absolutely love Gutekunst. I think that I think he handled the Rodgers situation well because they were kind of in a bad spot when they weren't talking. They're getting right before they got all happy, lovey-dovey again. I feel like that was a hard spot. He handled it well. The drafting Jordan Love, when everyone thought it was the dumbest thing. Not everyone, but a lot of people did. A lot of people were upset. If that didn't work out, not to say that's end conclusions here already, but his first season kind of showed that he's an NFL quarterback. Mm-hmm. If that didn't happen, he had to really trust himself. That's why I say, I'm sure it's every GM, but the confidence that he has just to do something like the Aaron Jones, all these things he's done. And like you say, he brought in Preston, brought in Zadarius, Amos that offseason when he got a safety this year. I feel like he's making the right things. Not perfect, but I'm glad he's our GM. I don't know every GM in the league, but I like ours. I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, like you said, I mean, there are moves that haven't worked, and there's moves that aren't popular in the moment. I know the Aaron Jones one recently will come to mind, but swapping out Jimmy Graham for Jordy Nelson, realistically, I think the answer to that is more so that he was right to move on from Jordy. It just giving that money to Jimmy Graham didn't go so good. That's the hard part, but no general manager is going to bat 1,000. If they did, if it was that simple, anybody could do it.
Yeah, I can't even do it on Madden. That's what I always say. If I get 3 years into Madden, my cap is screwed. But
yeah,
all right. So I like this question. Justin Jefferson. First of all, he's a Bengals fan. That's why he's asking this. But Justin Jefferson, is there any chance that he is gonna want to be out of Minnesota? Maybe that's just my hope. I would like that very much. Yeah. For him to be I want out.
Yeah, never say never. that's kind of where I guess I would go with that. But I don't see the Bengals already have to pay Jamar Chase, and like you're not paying Joe Burrow quarterback money, and then you're going to pay Chase and Jefferson quarterback money. Like I have my doubts that's something that, unless it was just like, hey, we're really just doing this for this year and that's it. But I mean, teams just don't operate that way. So I have my doubts. Jefferson, I know that there was some discussion that he may not be happy about, Kirk Cousins leaving and everything that's tied to that. But I don't know. The Vikings look to be a team that's amped up to be going to get a quarterback. And I think it's going to end up being J.J. McCarthy, which makes me sad for many reasons because I would like to be able to root for him at the next level, but I'm not going to be able to do that if he's in Minnesota. So, no, I don't think he's going to the Bengals. I don't think Jefferson's going anywhere, but I didn't think Devontae was going anywhere, and I didn't think Stephon Diggs was going anywhere. Receivers, it's tough, man. It's receivers. That's how it is.
Yeah, because, only thing I can see, if they didn't get the quarterback situation fixed and they were just dreadful season and it was horrible, but like you say, if they get a good rookie quarterback and he actually plays well, I think it'll be fine. But if it is a stumbling, he's having a bad year, I could see him getting real cranky, not wanting to be sticking around Minnesota. But I don't know. I hate the Vikings so much. I hope that happens. I really do.
Right there with you.
All right, before I let you out of here, I want to run through the NFC North, not completely, but where do you rank the NFC North next season? How do you see the team stacking up?
Yeah, so Green Bay and Detroit, I think, are at the top. I think it's a 2-horse race for best team in that division. And I say that because Chicago is going to have a rookie quarterback. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be fine, but I think he's going to really struggle as a rookie because there's just some bad habits that he has to break. And there's things that'll work in college that don't work in the NFL, and he's going to learn some of those things the hard way. Minnesota, I actually think Minnesota's defense is going to be pretty solid. Again, the issue is just they're going to start Sam Darnold for a while and then go to a rookie, I'm sure at some point. Just betting on a rookie quarterback to duplicate what CJ Stroud did or something like that, that's a hard bet to make. And couple in the fact that for all intents and purposes, the NFC Championship game last year should have been Detroit and Green Bay because Green Bay should have beaten San Francisco. And then Detroit should have beaten San Francisco and played in the Super Bowl, but they didn't. So I think those are 2 of the 5 best teams, maybe in all of football. Definitely 2 of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFC. And the NFC, as far as everything stacks on paper, as we've learned, last year, Matt, I don't know how you felt about the Packers going into the season. I had no expectations. I thought they'd be pretty average, which is what their final record ended up being. But their arrow was pointing skyward by the end of the season. They're really good, and I think they have a chance to be, the right move, a right draft pick here or there, maybe another bargain free agent signing type thing. There's a world that exists where the Packers could win a Super Bowl in 2024, and that's not something that existed, I think, this time a year ago.
Oh yeah, because people always say, because I've been yelling Packers going to Super Bowl, this and that, and they're like, you said it last year, but I didn't. Last year I said we're gonna see. I thought this season was gonna be about seeing what they have, and not just Jordan Love, but these young wide receivers, this young team, young tight ends, just trying to get them to learn how to play together. And Matt LaFleur, new quarterback, is anything gonna change? How that relationship is gonna go? And I was pumped with how the season went. I wish that they had won at the end, but I'm excited about the Packers next season. I do think. I think they're gonna go to the Super Bowl. I really do. And if people get mad at me, when I say it, you're just a homer, should I lie? I really do think. It takes a lot to go to the Super Bowl. Just being good doesn't get you there. Some luck has to happen. Not even luck, but a little bounces your way, or just you get hot and you're just unbeatable. But some stuff has to happen. It's not just the numbers. Although this is the best team, so they're gonna go. You got to have some stuff go your way in the playoffs. And unfortunately, the Niners, stuff just went their way in the playoffs, and then in the Super Bowl they got payback on that because then it went the other way. That's kind of how it is. It sucks, but big shout out to Jacob jumping on here, talking some draft, getting me a little smarter. Hopefully, people can learned a little bit on this. But tell them again where they can find your stuff and your draft guide.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Jacob Westendorf. You can find stuff I write, si.com/NFL/Packers. That's Packers Central with Bill Huber. So I'm doing a series right now on roster building, basically saying what players are blue chips, what players are like building blocks, what players are backup, what player is easily replaceable or easily upgradable with every position on the team. And going that way. And I do a mock draft every Wednesday. I know everybody loves a good mock draft, so feel free to check those out too and tell me how bad they suck or how I took too many Michigan players. I get that once a week, so that's kind of fun too. But you can find that stuff there. And then, the draft guide, it's in the YouTube description. It'll be in the podcast description. It gets tweeted all the time. Myself, Ross Uglum, and Jacob Morley, 225 profiles specific to the Green Bay Packers. So pre-order today for $8.99. We do some giveaways and stuff like that too, so you have a chance to earn a free guide, but you got to follow all three of us to figure out when we're doing that.
All right, perfect. Everyone be sure to check it out. I'm going to get that guide so I can sound a little smart. But we're going to wrap this thing up. Big shout out to Jacob, and shout out to sponsor of the show, Quick Trip, and also Nicolay Law sponsoring us. So appreciate you. Thanks for everyone listening and watching. We have 700 people live right now. That's a beautiful thing. But go Pack.